Hi, my name is Katarina Sullivan and I would like to welcome you to my YouTube channel. I've been trying to put off recording a video until we've got a little bit more information around what kind of government we're going to have. But counting votes is a painstaking procedure and it doesn't look like we're going to see any major leaps and bounds over the next 12 to 36 hours. So, election wrap-up video, here we come. Today, Anthony Albanese, leader of the Labour Party, was sworn in as the 31st Prime Minister of Australia by the Governor-General. So yes, in case you somehow missed it, Labour won the election. What has been phenomenal is the number of independents, especially female independents, that have won seats in traditional coalition strongholds. At the time of filming this video, the ABC has estimated that Labour has won between 73 to 74 seats, the Coalition around 54 seats, the Greens 3 seats, and Independents 12 seats. These 12 seats include one for Katter's Australia Party and one for Centre Alliance. So there are still 8 to 9 seats in doubt at this stage. The question is down to whether or not Labour will be able to win 76 seats to secure a majority government. It wasn't looking like it at the beginning, but it could possibly go that way now. As you will remember from previous videos in my How the Australian Political System Works series, the party who forms government is the party with the most seats in the lower house, also known as the House of Representatives. As we currently have 151 seats in the lower house, a party would need 76 seats to win over 50%. If not, that party needs to work with other parties and independents to form what is known as a coalition. So while the election is over and we know the outcome, there are still aspects of the 47th Parliament of Australia and how it will look that are up in the air. This includes the Senate, which, if you go back again into some of my previous videos, is a nightmare to count and could take weeks. It's hard to provide clear-cut stats on some of the changes we've seen over the course of the election, as less than 75% of the vote has actually been counted. But we have seen some interesting figures so far, subject to change, obviously, as the count continues. Firstly, while Labour has won the election, they also received a swing against them. What this means is that less people voted for Labour this election than they did last election on first preferences. Obviously, their swing was far less significant than the swing against the coalition, but it raises an interesting point. For both parties to see such a swing, it really shows that the minor parties and independents are speaking to the Australian population more than what the major parties are. Both Labour and the Coalition need to do a bit of soul searching to work out why this is and how they can address it by 2025, which is when our next federal election will be held. Secondly, at the time of filming this video, Labour's first preference vote is the lowest it has been at any election since 1934. In fact, there has only been one other time in history that Labour has been able to form government with a first preference vote as low as this, which was a minority government in 1903. As the weeks go on and the count is finalised, it will be interesting to see if more first preference votes for Labour trickle in, or if Labour has won the election based on second preferences and beyond. What this means is that if someone puts their first preference as Greens, but there weren't enough votes for the Greens candidate, it is likely that their second preference went to Labour and the Labour candidate would have been elected. Why this is significant is that as it stands, less than a third of the population actually voted for Labour as their number one preference. With them winning government, this puts them slightly on the back foot. Tanya Plibersek, member for Sydney and former deputy leader of the Labour Party, has said a win is a win. And while this is true, it does throw into question, in some arenas, their mandate. In fact, on first preference votes alone, the Coalition is actually the leading party, despite receiving an almost 6% swing against them. However, due to the swing towards the Greens and the Teals, this has given Labour the confidence to at least secure their climate and ICAC mandate. the economic argument might be trickier to push forward. The best way for Labour to lead this parliament with all of this in mind is to ensure that they are working collaboratively with the minor parties and independents to ensure the collective voice of Australians is being reflected in policy and legislative decision making. Now, where did the coalition go wrong? Simpsons memes as a starting point. My goodness, how glad I am that 24/7 political Simpsons memes are done for at least another 3 years, hopefully forever, and we won't have a childish campaign like we just had for the past 6 weeks. Joking aside, but also I'm not joking, the coalition lost this election on 3 key issues: women, the climate, and political integrity. It is now time for the coalition to do a complete audit of everything they stand for and how they can best represent their constituents. Scott Morrison stepped down on Saturday night as leader of the coalition. Now the party must choose a new leader. I hope to all the higher powers in the universe that Peter Dutton is not picked for leadership. Nothing personally against him necessarily, he just doesn't stand for what the voters have called for at this election. Women, political integrity, climate. But the rumours are it could be heading in Dutton's direction. Choosing Dutton would be a nail in the coffin for the coalition, as Dutton has been a poster boy for everything the voters have turned away from: lack of action on climate change, a blind eye to the rights and safety of women, and the dragging of their feet on a federal ICAC. If Dutton is voted as leader of the opposition, could likely be the end of the two-party system as we know it in this country. We're at a breaking point in our political system. The number of independents in Parliament is unprecedented in the modern era and requires careful consideration of next steps from the major parties and even from some of the minor parties. The coalition needs a youthful, visionary leader. I'm a big fan of Susan Lee, despite some of the trouble she was in a few years ago with the Gold Coast residents. She's on board with a more proactive approach to climate change. She is a woman. She is someone who has lived around the world and has a global perspective. She has experience as a minister and as a shadow minister. She has expressed support of Palestine in the past and has been active in animal rights. She's part of the centre-right of the Liberal Party. She's an ideal candidate for leadership. Of course, there's others in the running, and only time will tell. But I really think it's time for a woman to be at the helm of the coalition, to steer that ship in the right direction. Otherwise, the coalition will become our far right-wing party, and we will lose centre-right representation. Unless the independents may walk into 2025 with a formed party, a teal party of sorts, a centre-right party with a strong focus on mitigating climate change. And if that were to be formed with the support of Climate 200, for example, the financial backers of a lot of these people, then we might be in for a really interesting 2025 election. On the subject of the teal independents, I want to remind everyone of something quite important. While it is beyond wonderful that we have had so many women elected to Parliament through the success of the Teals, I want to bring the point back to diversity in our Parliament. During this Teal crusade, we have lost a Jewish member of Parliament, 2 openly gay MPs, including the first openly gay MP of our federal parliament, a member of Indian descent, and potentially in the Senate an MP of migrant heritage from Croatia. We also lost a female MP of Chinese descent, our first ever Indigenous member of Parliament, as well as our first ever Indigenous minister. Many of these seats have been lost to white candidates. And while an overwhelming majority of them are women, many are women from a privileged background, some from quite significant wealth. While it is fantastic that we have had more women voted into Parliament at this election, some of whom do come from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, the Teal independents overwhelmingly don't. And we have lost a significant amount of other intersectional diversity in our parliament. The one significant win of a Teal independent is Di Lee, who beat Keneally out of her seat. This was somewhat of a win for intersectionality after the controversy around Keneally being pre-selected ahead of another Vietnamese Australian candidate, Tu Lee, who was more local to the area. In saying this, Daly has come out to say that she is not in fact a Teal independent, but a real independent. So I don't know whether or not to include her in the Teal wave. The loss of the moderate Liberals, many of whom I mentioned above, Frydenberg, Wyatt, Sharma, Evans, Zimmerman, has been both positive for the representation in Parliament around greater action needed on climate change, but also a huge drawback to our nation. By these people no longer representing the views of moderate Liberal voters in Australia, these voters have lost their voice in one of the major parties. And while their voice currently lies with the independents, 10 independents compared to 54 members of the coalition is a very big difference. And not all moderate Liberals live in the seats where Teal independents have won. The formation of a Teal party with representation in more electorates would go a long way in giving these voters a voice by 2025. Simon Holmes-A-Court, if you're listening, you know what to do. So it's been a heck of a weekend, and surely more to come as the Senate votes are counted and these last few seats are called. I'd love to know what you think of the election outcome. Is it what you were expecting? Are you happy with the result? What do you want to see from the new Parliament? Comment below. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel, share with your family and friends, and I will see you next video. Bye for now.